Alright guys, so we're entering the time of year, it's kind of the dog days of winter when we're trying to get things figured out for the upcoming season. Bear season's still a couple months away, spring turkey season, all the new innovative equipment's coming out, and everybody's getting really excited about getting their bows or their guns or whatever it is ready for the upcoming year. One of the biggest questions we get here at Train to Hunt is about third axis and sights. Most everybody's really familiar with first axis and looking at a bubble level, but when you go and start shooting at steep angles, there's some major differences with third axis and the role that it'll play. So I'm here today with Steve Speck. He's the owner of S&S Archery. He's been kind enough to kind of enlighten all of us on what exactly third axis is. So with that, I'll let Steve take it over.
Yeah. So third axis is probably one of the most misunderstood topics out there. A lot of guys really don't know what it is. Third axis actually, it only comes into effect when you're shooting up and downhill. What you're really setting is your second axis, and your second axis is the bow doing this. So when second axis is important, obviously, because if you can't your bow, you're going to shoot left and right as you're shooting. So you know, at 20, 30 yards, it's probably not going to show up as much. You go shoot 70, 80, 90, 100 yards, you know, having your second axis set is really, really important. One technique I do when I'm shooting in a crosswind is to actually cant my bow. If you bring that top of the cam into the wind, you can put your pin on it and that will adjust for it. Something fun to do. But so second axis is what's important, and that's simply that this sight, when your bow and your string is level, that the bubble is reading level on the sight. And so on this black gold sight, the adjustment is just right back here in the screws. All you do is this slotted hole down here, loosen that up, and it pivots the entire head this way, and that's how you set up the second axis.
And I can definitely tell you guys, last year at the Bird, I got a butt kicking for not having this third axis. It made a tremendous difference. It's something you really need to educate yourself in, and it'll make a huge difference. So.
Okay, so the easiest way to explain second and third axis to people is just holding the carpenter's level. And so this is the bubble in your sight, right there, and your second axis is this movement, right? So you want to get that level, and that's setting your second axis. So the way to do that, it's really simple. Put your bow in a vise, put a level on the string, or you can go limb tip to limb tip. There's a few different ways to do it, and then make sure that that reads level and that the bubble in your sight is reading level. Third axis comes into effect when you're shooting up and downhill, and third axis is caused because when you draw a bow back, all the torque gets shifted over from the cables into the cable slide, into the limbs, into the riser, and your grip. That's one thing with third axis. To me, you have to set third axis. The shooter has to set it because everyone holds a bow differently, and it's going to affect the amount of torque that's applied. What happens with third axis is that when you draw back, that sight housing is no longer square to your eye. It's actually, to do it kind of an extreme example, it goes out at an angle like this. So while your bubble right here is still reading level, when you go to shoot downhill, the bubble instantly shoots up to the high side. When you go to shoot uphill, it instantly shoots up that way. And then you're actually canting your bow backwards, back into the hill, in this example, and you're canting it to be unlevel. So third axis, all you're doing is adjusting that sight housing, so when you're at full draw, it's perpendicular to your eye, to you, to the bow. Okay, so setting up the second axis, like I said, you got the bow and a jig. You just need something to hold it. I've got the little speed level here. Just making sure that the string is level this way right now, so it's not throwing this off. And then all you do is come to this side, and I'm just throwing a level on here, and I'm going to level that up. Okay, so you know, bow's in a jig. I got the string level, and then I'm looking at the bubble in the sight, and it's way off. So this is where we're adjusting second axis. On the black gold ascent here, this bottom hole in the bracket is actually just slotted, and so all you got to do is loosen up the bolt, maybe loosen up the top one just a touch, and then I'm just moving the sight housing. that it reads level. Let me get that shot. So now this is setting the second axis on the sight. You can see the level on the string and the level on the sight perfectly square. That's all you do for second axis. Now it's set. Tighten that back up. Okay, so now that we got the second axis set, this is where we do the third. If anybody ever tells you that you can adjust third axis without the bow at full draw, they're completely full of it. They don't know what they're talking about. Because the bow has to be at full draw, because that's the cause of third axis, is all the torque that goes into the system. Like I said earlier, it comes through your grip, comes through the cables. As you draw back, the entire load gets shifted off to the side and torques the bow. Depending on the bow, the limbs, the riser, everything's torquing and moving as you draw the bow back and put it under load. So again, third axis, now that the second is set, when we draw this bow back, everything basically is going to cant and shift the weight over to the right side. So if you ever, the best way to tell this on your bow is to stand back here with an arrow on the string, line up the string with the tip of the arrow, and your pins are always going to be out to the left side. So depending on how much torque there is in the bow is going to be the factor of how far your pins are out to the left. But what's happening is when you draw back, all the torque is applied, and it's basically putting those pins in line with the end of your arrow. Like I said earlier, when you go to adjust third axis, or the reason you need to adjust third axis is because everything goes to, is torqued at full draw. Take the bow out here. Everything's torqued at full draw. It's basically torqued out like this. So if you're looking right at it, it's torqued like that, and you go to shoot downhill, you'll see that bubble shot all the way up to the left. And then even though you're still level, that bubble's not reading level, and you're going to cant back, actually canting your bow, which that is the reason you're going to miss right or left on an up or downhill shot. So the third axis adjustment on this black gold sight is right here in the dovetail bar. Spot hog is actually in the same exact place. Now all this screw does is pivot the entire sight housing in and out. So as I do this, it's pivoting it in. As I do that, it pivots it out. For a right-hand shooter, it's always going to be you want it to be the left edge of the sight to be closer to you than the right edge. So I just kind of tighten that up, eyeball it, and then now we're going to test it out. Okay, so right now we got Levi arrow knocked, bow drawn back, and he's using the wall as a straight edge, that line right there, and he's going to line up his top pin and his bottom pin. Spot hogs have a wire for this, which works really well. And so he lines that up, and then when that's lined up, he looks at his bubble and finds out where his bubble is.
Looks like it's dead in the center. Alright guys, well I hope that helps to explain to you a little bit more about what third axis is. Be sure and check out S&S Archery. We really appreciate Steve taking the time out of his day to do this and to bring this to you guys, and hopefully you do have a better understanding. Any of you guys that live in the Boise area, be sure and stop in and check him out. He's got some great products, and if you guys live away, he has an awesome website, carries all the best gear for serious hardcore bow hunters or rifle hunters as well. He's got great backpacking equipment. So thank you very much, Steve.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And we'll see you later.